I torpedoed a dude's entire career because he was a bully. ELP is u/Tonkaman. Originally posted to r/petty revenge. Trigger warning. Misogyny, hostile work environment. To start off, yeah, I know I'm something of a Nepo baby, but it is what it is. My mom is incredibly successful in a very niche, but very lucrative field. This allowed my dad to be a stay-at-home dad, and my siblings and me to get a solid education. When I graduated from college, I decided to enter the same field as my mom. While I love her and our relationship is great, I didn't want to be known only as her kid or get special treatment just because of her reputation. So, I use my dad's surname and generally keep her identity to myself. I also avoided working directly for her. In my field and country, it's standard for new hires to have a trial period, at the end of which either party can end the relationship with no compensation required. So I joined a company for my trial period, and everyone seemed pleased with my work. I handled a few issues, and one manager even described me as a workhorse since I was the first one in and the last one out. But there was this one guy on my team who was a total jerk. This dude was incredibly rude, confrontational, and seemed to have a need to put others down whenever someone got any acknowledgement. If someone talked about struggling with something, he'd chime in with, "Oh yeah, I did that a while back, super easy." He'd undermine anyone's future plans, and I later found out he was making comments about my appearance and masculinity behind my back. His nastiness didn't seem limited to me. He was especially hostile toward women, making remarks about how women in our field should be raising kids instead of working. But management kept him around because they saw him as a hard worker with ambition. My trial period ended, and they offered me a permanent role, but I declined. I had no interest in working for someone who saw me as a workhorse or in dealing with a jerk any longer. I respectfully declined and found a job elsewhere. On my last day, I said my goodbyes, and while management said they were sorry to see me go, Jerk loudly announced, "Ha! Told you OP wouldn't stick around. Good riddance. Maybe this field isn't for you either." I didn't respond, just left quietly. Fast forward a bit, and I'm now happily employed elsewhere. I enjoy my work, my colleagues, and I've even been promoted. I rarely thought about Jerk anymore, until my new company started receiving applicants from my old one. My boss knew I'd worked there, so whenever an application from that company came through, he'd ask for my opinion. I'd give honest feedback, which was usually positive. But guess whose application eventually came up? Yep, Jerk's. When my boss asked for my opinion, I said, "Look, I have personal feelings about this person, and I can't be objective." My boss, knowing how rarely I spoke negatively of anyone, asked me what happened. So, I told him the full story. Jerk didn't get hired, and I figured that was the end of it. A few days later, at a family dinner, my mom casually asked, "You had a trial period at that company, right? Do you know Jerk?" Turns out she'd heard about my experience with him, and once she confirmed it was the same guy, she refused to hire him too, especially given his views on women. Eventually, my company hired one of Jerk's former co-workers, and I learned the full story. After I left, Jerk got promoted, which actually caused a bunch of people to leave. Management started investigating why strong employees were quitting after their trial periods, and it all pointed back to Jerk. When management confronted him, he was unreceptive to criticism, and they ultimately let him go. That's when he'd applied to both my company and my mom's, with no success. Now, he's apparently no longer in our field, which, as I mentioned, has very few employers. Update, 1 month later. So, some time has passed, and I thought I'd share a small update and clarify a few things. 1. As some guessed, I work in a very niche field in medicine in a small country. There aren't many spots in residency programs, but there's a constant influx of students and interns. It's a demanding field with rough hours, but the pay and prestige are solid. 2. I did have an exit interview after my trial period, and I mentioned that I didn't vibe with the culture and some aspects of their approach. I didn't specifically name Jerk. 3. Since I'm a young specialist in a relatively small department, I get some input on potential colleagues, so if I say someone isn't a good fit, it carries weight. And if a department has trouble attracting strong candidates because its chief resident is a jerk, it's bound to raise concerns. As for Jerk's current situation, after he was let go, he tried to get into another department but wasn't successful and even attempted to move abroad, which caused a strain in his marriage. Turns out, I actually know his now ex-wife from med school. We reconnected recently, and she shared how his failed career move contributed to their split. We're even getting coffee again soon. So, in a way, my decision to speak up might have torpedoed his marriage as well. That's it for now. See you in the next post.